The morning sun hadn't yet touched Manhattan's glass towers when Olivia Sterling entered the boardroom. Her red dress caught the early light as her assistant approached with coffee. "Your morning brew, Miss Sterling." Just as Olivia's fingers touched the porcelain handle, a voice exploded from the doorway. "Don't drink that coffee." Every head snapped toward Nathan Carter, the janitor, standing frozen with his cleaning cart abandoned. The room held its breath as the CEO's hand hovered over the cup. One shout could change everything. Would the CEO choose to trust him or not? Asterisk. Sterling Tower rose 53 floors into the Manhattan skyline, a monument to corporate ambition and ruthless success. At its helm sat Olivia Sterling, 34 years old, with platinum blonde hair that fell in soft waves past her shoulders. She had inherited the company from her father 5 years ago, transforming it from a traditional investment firm into a technology powerhouse worth billions. But success had come at a price. The warmth that once danced in her blue eyes had frozen into calculating assessment. The red dress she wore today wasn't just fashion, it was armor. A statement of power in a world where showing weakness meant losing everything. Nathan Carter existed in a different universe within the same building. At 36, his broad shoulders still carried the bearing of his military past, though his uniform had changed from combat fatigues to a janitor's navy blue coveralls. Every morning at 4:30, he would kiss his sleeping daughter Lily goodbye, leaving her in the care of their elderly neighbor, Mrs. Rodriguez, before making the hour-long commute from their small rental in Queens to Manhattan's gleaming financial district. The other executives never noticed him as he emptied their trash bins and polished their mahogany desks. To them, he was invisible, a ghost who maintained their perfect world while they slept. But Nathan noticed everything. Years of military training had sharpened his senses to a razor's edge. He noticed how Damian Cross, the company's chief operations officer, always stayed late on Thursdays when the building was nearly empty. He noticed the subtle tension that rippled through meetings whenever Olivia challenged the board's recommendations. Most importantly, he noticed the small things that others missed, like the faint chemical smell emanating from the coffee cup that morning, a smell that transported him back to his days handling hazardous materials in Afghanistan. Damian Cross cut an imposing figure at 40 years old. Tall and lean, with prematurely gray hair slicked back from a sharp widow's peak, he dressed exclusively in silver-gray suits that matched his cold, calculating eyes. He had joined Sterling Enterprises 3 years ago, recruited from a rival firm with promises of partnership and eventual succession. But patience had never been Damian's virtue. Behind closed doors, he whispered to board members about Olivia's emotional leadership style, her reckless innovation strategies. He painted himself as the steady hand the company needed, the rational mind that could guide Sterling Enterprises into its next chapter. Little Lily Carter, 7 years old with her father's dark hair and her late mother's gentle brown eyes, understood more than adults gave her credit for. She knew her daddy was tired when he came home each night. Knew that the job he did wasn't the job he was meant for. She had seen the engineering textbooks hidden in his closet, the certificates and medals packed away in boxes they never opened. But she also knew her father would do anything to keep her safe and happy. Every night, she would wait by the window for his familiar figure to round the corner. Her homework finished, the table set with their modest dinner, playing the role of the little woman of the house with a maturity that both broke and warmed Nathan's heart. The boardroom itself seemed to breathe with anticipation that morning. 23rd floor, northeast corner, with views stretching across the Hudson River. The mahogany table could seat 20. Though only 12 chairs were filled for this emergency session about the Morrison acquisition. The walls displayed original artwork worth more than Nathan would earn in 10 lifetimes, and the morning light cast long shadows across the Persian rug that had belonged to Olivia's grandfather, the company's founder. Laughter erupted from several board members as Nathan stood frozen in the doorway. "Someone call security," muttered Harrison Blake, the chief financial officer, his voice dripping with disdain. The help seems to have forgotten their place. But Olivia raised her hand, silencing the room. Something in Nathan's eyes, desperation, mixed with certainty, made her pause. She had built her empire on instincts, on reading people and situations that others missed. And every instinct now screamed that this interruption was more than a janitor's confusion. You have exactly 30 seconds to explain yourself, Olivia said, her voice cutting through the tension like a blade through silk. Make them count. Mister. She paused, realizing she didn't even know the name of the man who had cleaned her office for 2 years. Carter, Nathan supplied, stepping forward despite the security guard who had appeared at his elbow. Nathan Carter. And that coffee contains ethylene glycol. I can smell it. It's subtle, mixed with vanilla creamer to mask the scent, but it's there. Someone is trying to poison you, Miss Sterling. The room exploded again, this time with shocked gasps and nervous chatter. Damian Cross was the first to recover, rising from his seat with practiced concern. This is absurd, he declared, his gray eyes narrowing on Nathan. This man is clearly delusional. Olivia, we can't delay the meeting for the fantasies of a janitor who probably watched too many crime shows last night. But Olivia hadn't moved, her hand still hovering over the coffee cup. She studied Nathan's face, saw the conviction there, the fear not for himself, but for her. A memory surfaced. She had seen him before, not just cleaning her office but in the lobby, helping an elderly board member who had stumbled, staying late to ensure a young intern got safely to her car after working past midnight. Small acts of kindness from someone the world ignored. Test it, she said quietly, and the room fell silent. If Mr. Carter is wrong, we proceed with the meeting, and he faces consequences for this disruption. If he's right, she let the implication hang in the air like a sword over all their heads. Damian's face flushed red. This is ridiculous. We're about to close a $300 million deal, and you want to delay everything because a janitor has an overactive imagination? The board won't stand for this waste of time and resources. The board, Olivia said coolly, will appreciate their CEO taking every precaution with her safety, especially given the hostile takeover attempts we've faced this quarter. She turned to her assistant. Call the police. Have them bring a field testing kit. This meeting is postponed for 1 hour. Nathan felt his knees weaken with relief. But he remained standing, aware that every eye in the room was dissecting him, judging him, dismissing him. He thought of Lily, of what would happen to her if he lost this job. But he also thought of another woman, another time when he had failed to speak up, failed to act on his instincts. The cost of that silence had been everything. The weight felt eternal. Board members whispered among themselves, some shooting suspicious glances at Nathan, others nervously eyeing the coffee cup that sat untouched at the center of the table like a coiled snake. Damian paced by the windows, his phone constantly buzzing with messages he didn't answer. Olivia remained seated, her posture perfect, her expression unreadable. But Nathan caught the slight tremor in her hands that she hid by clasping them in her lap. When Detective Sarah Chen arrived with her team, the testing was swift and professional. The field kit's color strips turned deep blue, then purple positive for ethylene glycol, a lethal dose that would have caused organ failure within hours. The boardroom fell into stunned silence. Olivia's assistant collapsed into a chair, realizing she had nearly served her boss a death sentence. Harrison Blake loosened his tie, his face pale, and Damian Cross. Damian's expression cycled through surprise, concern, and something else, a flicker of calculation that only Nathan caught, filed away in his mind like evidence. Who had access to the coffee? Detective Chen asked, her notepad ready. The assistant stammered that she had picked it up from the executive kitchen, where it had been prepared by the usual morning staff. But the coffee maker had been left unattended for several minutes, while the staff handled a delivery. Anyone with access to the executive floor could have tampered with it. This is obviously a targeted attack, Damian said, recovering his composure. We need to review all our security protocols. I'll personally oversee an investigation into everyone who had access to this floor this morning. He moved toward Olivia, as if to comfort her. But she stepped back, her eyes hard. Thank you, Mr. Cross. But I think we'll let the police handle the investigation. She turned to Nathan, and for the first time, really looked at him. Mr. Carter, I owe you my life. How did you know? How could you smell something that subtle? Nathan shifted uncomfortably under her gaze. Military training, ma'am. 8 years in the Army Corps of Engineers. We worked with hazardous materials, Learn to identify chemical signatures. Ethylene glycol has a slightly sweet smell, barely noticeable unless you know what you're looking for. When I was cleaning the hallway, I caught a whiff from the coffee, and I couldn't let you drink it. You risked your job, your livelihood, on a smell? Olivia's voice held wonder, and something else respect. Some things are worth more than a job. Nathan replied simply, thinking of Lily, of teaching her that doing right was always more important than doing what was easy. The past haunted Nathan in ways that few could understand. 5 years ago, his wife Emma had been driving home from her job at a pharmaceutical company when her car was struck by a delivery truck. The official report called it an accident brake failure, unavoidable tragedy. But Emma had called Nathan just minutes before. Terrified, she had discovered discrepancies in clinical trial data, evidence that her company had hidden dangerous side effects of a new drug. She was planning to blow the whistle. Then she was dead. Nathan had tried to pursue the truth, but a janitor's word against a multi-billion-dollar corporation meant nothing. The lawyers buried him in legal threats. The police closed the case. He had been forced to accept a settlement that barely covered Emma's funeral, signing a non-disclosure agreement that felt like betrayal. But the settlement had included one thing that mattered: a trust fund for Lily's education. For his daughter's future, Nathan had swallowed his pride and his quest for justice, taking the janitor job to make ends meet, while ensuring Lily would have the chances he and Emma had dreamed of giving her. Every night, he would sit by Lily's bed as she slept, whispering apologies to Emma's memory. He had failed to protect her, failed to achieve justice for her. The engineering degree that had once promised a bright future now gathered dust, a reminder of the life they should have had. His military commendations meant nothing when he couldn't even afford to fix the leak in their apartment's ceiling. But Lily never complained. At 7, she possessed a wisdom that came from loss. Experienced, too young. She would make dinner when Nathan worked late, usually mac and cheese or peanut butter sandwiches, but served with a flourish on their best plates. She would show him her perfect test scores, her teacher's notes about her exceptional promise, and Nathan would feel both pride and anguish, knowing his brilliant daughter deserved so much more. "Daddy, why did you stop being an engineer?" she had asked once, her brown eyes serious over her homework. "Sometimes life takes us in different directions, sweetheart," he had answered, not wanting to burden her with the truth. "But you could go back, couldn't you? If things were different? Maybe someday." He had lied, knowing that without money for recertification, without connections in an industry that had moved on without him, that door was firmly closed. The Sterling Tower investigation moved quickly, but Nathan noticed things the police missed. He saw how Damien's assistant nervously shredded documents when she thought no one was looking. He observed the subtle meetings between Damien and certain board members in the parking garage. Most tellingly, he overheard a fragment of a phone conversation as he cleaned the hallway outside Damien's office. The accident worked before. Damien's voice carried through the door. But this needed to be cleaner, untraceable. No. The janitor was a fluke. Nobody could have predicted. Just stick to the plan. Nathan's blood ran cold. The accident worked before. His mind raced, connecting dots that formed a picture too terrible to contemplate. He thought of Emma's car, of the delivery truck that had killed her, owned by a subsidiary of a company that Sterling Enterprises had acquired just months later. The pharmaceutical company Emma had worked for, also absorbed by Sterling in a hostile takeover that Damien Cross had orchestrated. That evening, Nathan did something he hadn't done in years. He opened the box of Emma's belongings he had hidden in the closet. Among her things, he found her final research notes, the ones she had hidden at home. The drug trial data was damning, but more importantly, her notes mentioned pressure from above to stay quiet. Pressure that came from someone interested in acquiring the company cheaply. Someone who would benefit if a scandal broke after the acquisition, allowing them to buy assets at rock-bottom prices. The signature on one memo made Nathan's hands shake. Damien Cross, then working for a private equity firm. The weight of the revelation crushed him. Damien had not only killed his wife, but had profited from her death, using the scandal that emerged after the acquisition to position himself as the savior who could clean up the mess. And now he was trying the same playbook with Olivia Sterling. Nathan sat in his small apartment, Lily asleep in the next room, staring at the evidence spread before him. He could go to the police. But what proof did he have? Circumstantial connections, overheard conversations, 5-year-old documents that any good lawyer could dismiss. He needed more. Needed someone with power and resources to help him connect the final pieces, and he knew exactly who that someone was. The next morning, Nathan arrived at work early, but instead of starting his cleaning routine, he went straight to Olivia's office. She was already there, standing at her window, watching the sunrise over the city. The red dress had been replaced by a sharp black suit, but the wariness in her posture was new. "Miss Sterling," Nathan began, then stopped. "How did you tell someone that their trusted advisor was a killer?" She turned, surprised. "Mr. Carter, I wasn't expecting to see you here. I actually wanted to talk to you about a reward." "I don't want a reward," Nathan interrupted. "I need your help, and I think you need mine." Olivia studied him, noting the tension in his shoulders, the documents clutched in his hands. "Close the door," she said quietly. For the next hour, Nathan laid out everything: Emma's death, the pharmaceutical company, Damien's connections, the overheard conversation. He showed her Emma's notes, watched as her face paled with each revelation. When he finished, Olivia sat in silence for a long moment. "You're telling me that Damien Cross killed your wife and is now trying to kill me to take over my company?" Her voice was steady, but Nathan heard the tremor beneath. "I'm telling you that he's done this before, and he'll do it again unless we stop him," Nathan replied. "But I can't do it alone. I'm just a janitor. My word means nothing. But you have the power to dig deeper, to find the proof we need." Olivia stood, pacing to the window. "If you're right, if even half of this is true, then I've been harboring a monster in my company. I've promoted him, trusted him, with everything." She turned back to Nathan. "But why should I trust you? How do I know this isn't some elaborate scheme?" Nathan met her gaze steadily. "Because I have nothing to gain, and everything to lose. Because I could have let you drink that coffee, and stayed silent. Because my daughter deserves to grow up in a world where people like Damien Cross don't win." Something in his words, in the raw honesty of his pain, convinced her. Olivia nodded slowly. "What do you need?" "Access to financial records, communication logs, anything that might show a pattern, and protection for my daughter. If Damien realizes what we're doing." "Done," Olivia said immediately. "I'll arrange for security for your daughter, discreetly. As for the records, I'll have my personal forensic accountants review everything. But Nathan, I can call you Nathan. We need to be very careful. If Damien suspects we're onto him, he might accelerate whatever plan he has." They agreed to meet after hours, using Nathan's cleaning rounds as cover. Over the next 2 weeks, they pieced together a web of corruption that stunned even Olivia. Damien had been systematically undermining her leadership, sabotaging deals, and manipulating board members. He had created a shadow structure within the company, ready to take over the moment Olivia was gone. The poisoned coffee had been just the latest in a series of attempts, each more bold than the last. Working together, they discovered an unexpected dynamic. Olivia, despite her cold exterior, possessed a brilliant strategic mind and a dry humor that emerged in their late-night sessions. Nathan, freed from the need to be invisible, revealed his engineering expertise, his analytical skills proving invaluable in understanding Damien's complex financial manipulations. They would sit in her office, surrounded by papers and laptop screens, sharing take-out Chinese food and stories of their lives. "I haven't eaten from a paper box in years," Olivia admitted one night, expertly wielding chopsticks. The board would be horrified. "Lily loves Chinese food," Nathan said, then caught himself. He tried not to talk about his daughter too much, aware of the vast gulf between their worlds. But Olivia leaned forward, genuinely interested. "Tell me about her. What's she like?" And Nathan did, his face lighting up as he described Lily's intelligence, her kindness, her terrible jokes that made him laugh anyway. Olivia listened with an expression Nathan couldn't quite read, something between wistfulness and pain. "I always wanted children," she said quietly. "But this job, this life, it doesn't leave room for family. My father made sure I understood that. The company always comes first. That's a choice, not a rule," Nathan said gently. "Your father's choice. Maybe. But it doesn't have to be yours." Their eyes met across the desk, and something shifted in the air between them. But before either could speak, Olivia's phone buzzed with an alert. The board had called an emergency meeting for tomorrow. Damien was making his move. The boardroom was packed the next morning, with all 20 seats filled and additional stakeholders standing along the walls. Damien had come prepared, armed with projections showing massive losses under Olivia's leadership. Cherry-picked data that painted a picture of incompetence and emotional instability. "The attempted poisoning has clearly affected Miss Sterling's judgment," Damien said smoothly, his gray suit impeccable, his presentation flawless. "She's seeing conspiracies everywhere, trusting janitors over executives, neglecting crucial deals to chase shadows. For the good of the company, I move that we vote on a temporary transfer of leadership until Miss Sterling can recover from this traumatic experience." Several board members nodded in agreement. Olivia sat silently, letting Damien build his case, letting him grow confident. Nathan stood in the corner, ostensibly there to clean, but actually waiting for his cue. "Furthermore," Damien continued, "I've discovered evidence of serious financial irregularities that occurred under Miss Sterling's watch. Funds diverted to personal accounts, suspicious payments to unnamed consultants. I fear our CEO may be suffering from more than just stress." "Those are serious allegations, Mr. Cross," said Harrison Blake, though his tone suggested he was already convinced. "Do you have proof?" "I do," Damien said, producing a folder of documents, bank records, emails, a clear pattern of embezzlement that you created," Olivia interrupted, standing slowly. "Every single one of those documents is forged, Mr. Cross. Rather skillfully, I'll admit, but forged nonetheless." Damien's face reddened. "This is exactly the paranoia I'm talking about. She's accusing me without any evidence." "Oh, I have evidence," Olivia said, her voice carrying the authority that had built an empire. "Mr. Carter, would you please share what you discovered?" Nathan stepped forward, and the board rustled with surprise and disdain. But their expressions changed as he began to speak. His military bearing evident, his voice clear and authoritative, he presented the financial forensics, the pattern of sabotage, the connections to Emma's death and the pharmaceutical company scandal. He showed them recordings of Damien's conversations, obtained legally through the company's own security systems. "This is preposterous," Damien exploded. "You're taking the word of a janitor? A man who clearly has a vendetta against me? His wife's death was a tragedy. But to blame me, how did you know it was his wife?" Olivia asked quietly. Nathan never mentioned that detail. Only someone who was involved would know that connection. The room fell silent. Damien's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. Nathan pulled out his final piece of evidence, Emma's research notes, her documented fears, and most damningly, a memo from Damien's previous firm discussing the opportunity that would arise from the pharmaceutical company's unfortunate scandal. "You killed my wife," Nathan said, his voice steady despite the rage burning in his chest. "You killed her because she was going to expose the truth, and you used her death to make yourself rich. And now you're trying to do the same thing to Miss Sterling." Board members were pulling out phones, calling lawyers, calling the police. Damien made a break for the door, but security was already there. Detective Chen leading them with an arrest warrant that Olivia's lawyers had helped secure the night before. "Damien Cross," Detective Chen announced, "you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, corporate fraud, and embezzlement. You have the right to remain silent." As they led him away, Damien turned back, his gray eyes blazing with hatred. "You think you've won? I have friends. Resources you can't imagine. This isn't over." "Yes, it is," Olivia said firmly. Your friends are already distancing themselves. Your assets have been frozen, and every crime you've committed is being investigated. It's over, Damien. The boardroom erupted in chaos after Damien was removed. Some board members apologized to Olivia. Others demanded explanations. Still others were already calculating how this would affect stock prices. Through it all, Olivia maintained her composure, taking control of the narrative, turning a potential disaster into a triumph of corporate governance and justice. But her eyes kept finding Nathan, who had retreated to his corner, suddenly aware that his part was over. He was still just a janitor who had stumbled into something bigger than himself. The adrenaline was fading, leaving him exhausted and oddly empty. When the board finally dispersed, Olivia approached him. Nathan, I need to thank you. Not just for saving my life, but for everything, for trusting me with your story, for fighting for justice for your wife. I should be thanking you, Nathan replied. Without your resources, your courage to take on Damien, Emma would never have gotten justice. I want to offer you a position, Olivia said suddenly. Head of security or engineering. Whatever you want. Name your salary. You don't belong cleaning floors, Nathan. You never did. Nathan was quiet for a moment, thinking of Lily, of the life this could give them. But then he shook his head. I appreciate the offer. Truly. But I don't want charity, and I don't want to be the janitor who got promoted because he saved the CEO. If you want to help, there is one thing. Anything. A scholarship fund. In Emma's name. For kids who've lost parents. Make sure it covers not just tuition but living expenses, books, everything. And, he hesitated, then continued. I'd like to go back to school myself, get recertified as an engineer. I'll work for it, pay it back. But I need a chance to become who I was meant to be. Olivia smiled, the first genuine smile he'd seen from her. Done. The Emma Carter Memorial Scholarship will be established this week. And as for your education, consider it an investment. Sterling Enterprises will need good engineers when you're ready. That evening, Nathan picked up Lily from Mrs. Rodriguez's apartment. Her face bright with excitement over a perfect score on her spelling test. As they walked home, he told her everything about Mommy, about justice finally being served, about the changes coming to their lives. Lily listened solemnly, then slipped her small hand into his. Mommy would be proud of you, Daddy. You were brave. I was scared the whole time, Nathan admitted. But you did it anyway. That's what brave means, right? That night, as Nathan tucked Lily into bed, she asked, Will we see the pretty lady again? The one from the tower. Miss Sterling? I don't know, sweetheart. She's very busy and important. She seemed sad, Lily observed with a child's intuition. Maybe she needs a friend. Nathan thought about Olivia, alone in her tower of glass and steel, surrounded by people but truly connected to none. Maybe she does. 3 weeks passed. Nathan had started his engineering classes, the rust slowly shaking off his dormant skills. The scholarship fund had not only been established, but had already helped 12 families. Damien's trial was proceeding, with enough evidence to ensure he would never harm anyone again. Life was settling into a new rhythm, hope replacing the survival mode they had lived in for so long. Then, on a Saturday afternoon, there was a knock at their door. Nathan opened it to find Olivia standing in the hallway of their modest building, looking beautifully out of place in designer jeans and a simple sweater instead of her usual corporate armor. She held a bag of groceries and a board game under her arm. I thought. She started, then stopped, vulnerability flickering across her features. Lily sent me a card through the office. She invited me to dinner. I hope that's okay? Nathan turned to see Lily beaming behind him. I told you she needed a friend. Daddy. Please, come in, Nathan said, stepping aside. Fair warning, it's spaghetti night, and Lily insists on making the sauce herself. I love spaghetti, Olivia said, and Nathan could tell she meant it, could see how hungry she was not for food but for this normalcy, warmth, family. The evening was unlike anything Nathan had experienced in years. Olivia helped Lily with the sauce, laughing when the 7-year-old seriously explained her secret ingredient was love and extra oregano. They played the board game Olivia had brought, with Lily delighting in beating both adults soundly. And when Lily finally fell asleep on the couch, her head on Olivia's lap while Nathan cleaned up, something shifted in the small apartment. "I haven't felt this peaceful in years," Olivia said softly, stroking Lily's hair. "Maybe ever." "You're welcome here any time," Nathan said, meaning it. Lily was right. Everyone needs a friend. Is that what we are? Friends? Olivia asked, looking up at him with those blue eyes that had once been so cold, but now held warmth and something more. Nathan sat down beside her, careful not to disturb Lily. "I think we could be." Or, he let the sentence hang, the possibility floating between them like a fragile bubble. "I'm not good at this," Olivia admitted. "Relationships, family, normal life. The company has been everything for so long. Nobody's good at it at first," Nathan said gently. "But maybe that's the point. We figure it out together." Olivia looked down at Lily, then back at Nathan. "She's extraordinary, you know. Brilliant, and kind, and funny. You've done an amazing job raising her alone. She's the best part of me," Nathan said simply. "The best part of Emma, too. Sometimes I look at her and see my wife's kindness, her determination to make the world better." "Emma would be proud," Olivia said. "Of both of you. Of what you've accomplished. The justice you achieved." They sat in comfortable silence, the city lights twinkling through the window, Lily breathing softly between them. Finally, Olivia spoke again. "I've been thinking about what you said, about choices. My father chose the company over family, but I don't have to make the same choice. I've been so focused on protecting his legacy that I forgot to build my own." She paused, gathering courage. "I'd like to try, to be part of something real, something that matters beyond stock prices and board meetings." Nathan reached over, taking her hand carefully. "It won't be easy. Our worlds are very different, but not our values," Olivia countered. "We both believe in justice, in protecting others, in doing what's right even when it costs us. That's more than most people ever find." "Lily comes first," Nathan said firmly. "Always. I wouldn't want it any other way," Olivia replied. "She's remarkable, and she makes you who you are. The man who saved my life, not once, but twice. Once from poison, and once from a poisoned life." As if sensing the moment, Lily stirred, opening her eyes sleepily. "Miss Olivia? Are you staying?" Olivia looked at Nathan, a question in her eyes. He nodded, squeezing her hand. "If you'll have me," Olivia said to Lily. "Your dad says you make the best pancakes on Sunday mornings." "The best," Lily confirmed. "Fully awake now. But you have to help." "It's a rule." "I'd love to help," Olivia said, and Nathan heard in her voice the same thing he felt in his chest, the sensation of coming home after a long, cold journey. 6 months later, the gossip columns would have a field day with the story. Billionaire CEO dating former janitor. A modern fairy tale or corporate scandal, but in the small apartment in Queens, where Olivia now spent most weekends, the headlines meant nothing. What mattered was Lily's laughter as Olivia helped her with homework, using engineering concepts Nathan had taught them both. What mattered was the three of them at Coney Island, Olivia shrieking with delight on her first roller coaster, while Lily and Nathan laughed. What mattered was Nathan's graduation from his recertification program, Olivia and Lily cheering louder than anyone as he walked across the stage. The Emma Carter Memorial Scholarship had grown beyond their wildest dreams, helping hundreds of families. Nathan now worked as Sterling Enterprises' head of sustainable engineering, a position that used his military experience and his renewed credentials. But more importantly, he worked regular hours, home every evening for dinner with his girls, both of them. On a quiet Tuesday evening, as rain pattered against the windows, Olivia stood in the kitchen she had once found so foreign but now navigated with ease. Nathan watched her help Lily set the table, their movements synchronized like a dance they had been practicing for years instead of months. "I love you," he said suddenly, the words escaping before he could overthink them. Olivia turned, her eyes bright. I love you too. Both of you. Does this mean you're going to be my mom? Lily asked with characteristic directness. Olivia knelt down to Lily's level. I could never replace your mom, sweetheart. She'll always be your mother, and we'll always honor her memory. But if you'll let me, I'd love to be part of your family. Lily considered this seriously, then nodded. Daddy smiles more when you're here. And you make him less sad about Mommy. I think she would like you. Nathan pulled them both into a hug, feeling Emma's presence not as a painful absence, but as a gentle blessing. She had loved him enough to want his happiness, had loved Lily enough to want her to have a complete family again. Later that night, after Lily was asleep, Nathan and Olivia stood on the small balcony, looking out at the city lights. I never expected this, Olivia said softly. When I walked into that boardroom months ago, I thought I had everything figured out. Success, power, control. But I was empty inside, wasn't I? You were guarded, Nathan corrected. There's a difference. You had love to give. You just needed someone to give it to. And you needed someone to see you, Olivia replied. Really see you? Not just the uniform you wore. They stood in comfortable silence, two souls who had found each other in the most unlikely circumstances. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, the ongoing trial, corporate battles, the complexities of blending two very different worlds. But tonight, they had this: a small balcony, a gentle rain, and the promise of a future neither had dared to imagine. In the end, it wasn't about the billionaire and the janitor. It was about two broken people who chose to build something whole together. It was about a little girl who needed a family and created one through sheer force of will and innocence. It was about justice and love and the courage to speak up when silence would be safer. Nathan thought of that morning when he had shouted across the boardroom, risking everything on an instinct. One voice, one moment of courage, had changed everything. He pulled Olivia closer, breathing in the scent of her perfume mixed with Lily's strawberry shampoo that had somehow gotten in her hair during bath time. Thank you, Olivia whispered against his chest. For saving my life. Thank you, Nathan whispered back. For saving ours. Sometimes the most powerful love stories begin not with attraction or passion, but with a simple act of courage, one person choosing to protect another, even at great cost to themselves. Nathan and Olivia's story reminds us that love can bloom in the most unexpected places, between the most unlikely people, if we're brave enough to trust, to forgive, and to build something beautiful from the ashes of our pain. Share this story if you believe in the power of second chances, in the triumph of justice, and in the endless possibility of love to heal even the deepest wounds. Asterisk.